This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
So you can imagine with something like a hydraulic program, they're like, no, we've got our scientific calculators and we look really cool, punching in these numbers. We're not going to get a home computer and do that.
This is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Bill Rice published one program in the Atari Program Exchange catalog, HYSYS, or Hydraulic Program. It was a tool that did calculations for sizing hydraulic systems and components. HYSYS first appeared in the winter 1982 APX catalog. I'm going to read its catalog entry for you. Hydraulic Program by William Rice, recommended for people involved with hydraulics, written in BASIC. Your racing team wants to speed up tire changes in the pits. Manually jacking up each side of the car currently takes about 3 seconds. You suggest a little DC-powered hydraulic unit might be the answer. You happen to have a unit in your lowrider car you'll remove for team spirit. The unit puts out 4.5 gallons per minute at 2,500 pounds per square inch. You also have a 1.5-inch diameter cylinder to go with it. Not having the least idea whether this will raise your car at all, much less do so faster, you tell everyone to take a lunch break. Now get out your Atari computer and use HYSYS to find the answer. Containing 14 system calculations, HYSYS has two menus, one for hydraulic cylinders and one for motors and pumps. It also displays a printable system tally sheet for each menu's parameters. You can display the tally sheet at any time, change one of the parameters, and redisplay the tally sheet with all selected parameters updated to reflect the new input. You can also erase the tally sheet and start over. Intended for people involved in designing hydraulic systems, HYSYS quickly solves all the time-consuming calculations normally needed to size hydraulic systems and components. In fact, the program lessens the technical knowledge needed to design a hydraulic system. With the data the program calculates for you, you can often simply specify the support equipment meeting those specifications. P.S. Your little power unit will save both time and effort. The pit team was mighty impressed. The author invites written questions and comments. Review comments. This program is useful only for those already having some knowledge of hydraulics. The automatic updating of the utility sheet is very helpful. You can change one parameter and immediately see the effect on the rest of the system. The user manual is good. Requires Atari Basic Language Cartridge. Optional, Atari printer or equivalent printer. Order information, it's available on diskette, requires 32K RAM, price was $22.95, APX catalog number 20066. This interview took place on January 27, 2016. So, the only thing that I know that you wrote for the Atari was a very niche-y little program called Hydraulic Program. So I would like to know how you got involved with the Atari computer, why you wrote the hydraulic program, and just tell me the story, please.
Sure. Yeah, the program is called HYSYS, HYSYS, meaning hydraulic system. And I was an outside salesman for a company called Haskell. And I sold hydraulic systems at the time. So one of the things we used was a HP, like one of those programmable HP 65s or 35s or whatever they were back then. And those things were extremely complicated, and if you missed them putting one thing, you were going to get bogus answers. And so I thought, why don't I make a program on a computer that does what basically we were inputting in a very difficult fashion on one of those scientific calculators. So that's what I did. And then, basically the genesis was that I needed it to work to make my job easier, to be able to design hydraulic systems. The formulas are fairly easy, but there's probably about as many as 6 in a row that you have to use, being very careful about which variables you put in at what time. And so But one of the nice things about my program was that, you could, when I finished it, you could put a variable in anywhere, and it would ripple back and forth and make new results backwards or forwards. And you can't, you couldn't do that with the HP Scientific. You could only go one direction, from beginning to end.
Right.
So it was really, awesome. So
nice. So this was something that you were using for work, and so did your boss love it? You get a pay raise, and everything went great, or?
It's funny. They didn't seem to. That business, that specific business, it was kind of like banks. I used to go into banks at that time. People, the tellers didn't even have calculators, for God's sakes. And you're just going like, oh God! I mean, they would have those little punch key things, and
Mm-hmm.
and so our company was kind of backwards too. We had a telex machine, and so you can imagine with something like a hydraulic program, they're like, no, we've got our scientific calculators, and we look really cool, punching in these numbers. We're not going to get a home computer and do that, because remember, there was a stigma, like the Atari 800 at that time was like a home computer.
Right.
And so, HP, that's a scientific calculator, so, so they weren't that impressed, but I was out on a sales call. It's funny, I was out on a sales call and talking to a customer. And he had my program, and I go, hey, I wrote that program. He's like, oh, that's great. Anyway, so that was kind of nice.
Nice.
That was validation.
So you wrote it, and then I assume you were familiar with the APX catalog, and you submitted it through the regular channels. Can you tell me about that?
Right. Yeah, I submitted it, and the funny thing about it is I submitted it, and whoever I submitted it to, I don't fault them at all. They're going like, are you sure this works? Because they were totally going off me. In other words, they didn't know how hydraulic systems worked, and so I had to. They did a QA check 3 times, and they said basically QA check was, "Are you sure these calculations are correct? Are you sure these formulas are right?" And so that was kind of hilarious. And I said, "They are, because what I and I told them it's real simple. What you do is you go, of course, and you have a known answer, and then you make sure that when it comes out, it's going to gives you that same known answer." So it was easy to check. So, it was kind of fun. As far as the submitting it and that, I'm kind of fuzzy on that. You're going way back. But I remember it was a lot of fun. And I remember I sold a few. I basically remember I paid for my computer with it. So that was about how much money I made.
Nice.
Enough to pay for the computer. So, yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a kick in the pants.
Nice. Did you get any
I love that Atari 800. That thing kicked butt, man. I still think, in one sense, that computer's never been replicated. That thing had 4 joystick ports on it. And those ports could send voltage out.
Mm-hmm.
And with that voltage, I don't know if I told you, but I had a home program that I did. I wired up my whole house to the computer. Atari 800.
I want to know all about that. Ports.
Yeah, and that thing puts out like, what is it, 0.5 milliamps and some just barely noticeable power out. You can step that up through transformers, and I was controlling like light switches, doorbells, and stuff like that through those joystick ports. And remember, there's 7. What was it? There were 7 ports and a negative on that thing. So you had 7 times 4 potential things you could put on the end of that thing. And, it worked great. I had a wiring bundle that went all over through my attic and underneath the house to the garage door and the front door. I had I can't remember what you call them. I had one of those Radio Shack doormats It was basically a limit switch. So when you stepped on it, that would send a computer signal or a signal to my computer. So I knew somebody was at the front door, and I sent a signal back out to automatically ring the doorbell and turn on the front yard light or front door light. And, that was through step up transformers. So, I was turning on 300-watt lights with an Atari 800. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun. I had a blast programming that Atari 800. That thing was so much fun.
Nice. So what else is running? You had the front door, you had the garage door, the lights.
Right. Yeah, I had, interestingly enough, I had the phone on it too. So when somebody called, it would log the time. And of course, all these were on printouts and in memory. So I could say, oh, somebody called at this time. Because remember, this is back when message machines were just starting. So a lot of times those things the early models, they didn't even tell you what time somebody called. They just had a message.
Right.
So what I did, this sounds so stupid, but it worked. I put a wire to the striker and a wire to the bell. And when the phone rang, like ling, 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 it made contact. And that sent a signal to the Atari. So, real rudimentary, but hey, it worked.
Nice.
And so, yeah, and then I put limit switches, on like the garage door and stuff like that. It was kind of like just a fun hobby thing to do. But something, I bet to this day, if you got one of those Atari 800s, you can still program them and make, send signals out to do stuff. I mean,
Sure.
How many computers, I guess they probably have interfaces now that go out to power ports and stuff for.
Well, yeah, now with the those little tiny little BeagleBone machines and that popular, there's a little like $10 computer that everyone loves now that has all sorts of ports and stuff. Yeah. You can program it in Python. Yeah. I think people are doing that sort of thing now, but now I don't know if it's easier, but it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And cheaper than dedicating a whole 800 to it.
That Atari 800, I had more fun on that computer. I work with computers every day. I do CGI and editing and all that stuff. I've been doing it for off and on for 20 years. But I think the most fun I had was on that Atari 800, just learning BASIC and making that thing do its thing. It was just a lot of fun. And I'm not even a programmer type, I'm a right brain guy, I'm a creative guy. And, I'm not a math guy, but I do know algebra. That's the only thing I do know. And of course, BASIC eats, breathes, and sleep algebra. So, it was a lot of fun doing that. Of course, millions of people were doing it. Do you remember back then, Atari was bigger than Apple?
Oh, yeah. It was huge.
Yeah. But, of course, that was because of that game console. In like 1 year died, and then there was like, no Atari, practically.
And you told me earlier that when you sold the house, the new buyer loved it, and they got the 800 with the house.
Yeah, when the guy was looking at the house, I showed him that, and he goes, "Oh man, that's really cool." He really loved it. And he says, "You think you could make more of these?" And I said, "Absolutely not," because it was handmade. I mean, all the wires. I wired all the wires. I mean, sure, you could make a wiring bundle and all that stuff, but I spent. And that was the most fun I had on computers, by the way, is debugging. I don't know how many programmers love this, but I really love debugging programs, trying to figure out what was screwed up. And there was I had 5 million bugs in that program because, multiple things were happening at once. And so I get bugs all the time. So in any case, the guy saw the system and he says, "Oh, yeah, I'd like to package these up and put it in other houses." And I said, "I ain't going to do it." I said, "I did it once and that's it." And I knew what it was that somebody would eventually come along and they're just now coming along doing it. They really, with the Apple HomeKit, they're just now starting to do stuff like that in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose you could have customized stuff and done it back then. But yeah, it was a trip. I loved it.
Nice. So HYSYS was the only thing you published through APX. Did you submit other stuff? Did you write other programs for yourself or for publication?
On the Atari, yeah, I wrote. Well, did I tell you I'm not really a programmer?
You mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah. I spent about 5 years total doing the programming stuff because I really loved it because it used my creativity in a different way than I was used to because I'm an artist. And, problem solving because it's just you and the computer, and that is really satisfying when you figure out problems because you beat it and you go like, yeah, I'm smart.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do that, it's really fulfilling, but it's also, it takes a lot of time. Programmers, they love it and they become zombieized watching, working on the computer because the feedback is direct and it's you against the machine or you with the machine. So, but like I said, I'm an artist. And so after about 5 years, I go, look, I got to make a decision. Am I going to do this, which I'm really not that good at? Because I tried to study assembly. I'm sorry, I couldn't hack it. Mm-hmm. I read the book 3 times, and it's like, red sheet, FIFO, in and out, and all that stuff. I just couldn't hack it. That wasn't in my brain, and so I decided to just use programs, not make them, and get back into what I was aiming for, and that was being a filmmaker. So, I kind of left that behind. I did have a brush with Objective-C about 3 or 4 years ago. I became an Apple developer and tried to get into that, but I didn't actually put any programs up. I was just too busy doing other stuff.
I found a book for the Atari ST called A Reference Manual for Personal Pascal, which was co-written by Bill Rice. I'm assuming that was not you.
That was not me.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I love, but what I will tell your listeners is, one thing I think programmers need is they need a creative guy. Steve Jobs was the right brain guy. Wozniak was the left brain guy. And they kind of think, I worked with programmers and I worked with some high-end guys, and they do actually think different. They do need a creative guy to offer them that side of the thing. Mm-hmm. Because they can't do both. I found that I couldn't do the heavy lifting in the programming, and I found that really good programmers couldn't do almost the simplest stuff in the creative side. So, but when you get together, that relationship really works well. So, I'm just talking here.
That's a good thought. No, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, they should think of that, because when I was writing another program, or I was working with a team of 3 other guys on a teacher's aid program, and we had a real heavy duty program on there, and he thought DOS looked hot. And I'm going like, it's just numbers, man, and like C, colon, / and all that crap. And he's like, yeah, that's all you need, man. They don't understand that the interface and the artistic aspect is very important too, as we all know now. I was putting splash screens on the programs and stuff, so that's the deal there.
All right. What do you do today?
Yeah, it's a good deal. What do I do today?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a media director. I've been a media director for 3 different companies now in my recent history. So, I do editing, CGI, and, that sort of thing. I've made movies, I worked in the movie business for like 20 years, off and on. and I've directed 3 feature films, edited, that sort of thing, the creative stuff, So
Nice.
Away from the programming world, but I really admire programmers. I've worked, when I did the HYSYS program, I lived in San Jose, and I was in that group. I went to the homebrew computer club and all that, even though that wasn't really me. I was in that. I was, knee deep in that, and it was a lot of fun. It was a cultural thing. That was actually the place to be during the 80s, was Silicon Valley. I mean, that was where the action was.
Oh, yeah.
Culturally. And like the 70s, the early 70s, it was San Francisco, and in the 80s, it was San Jose and Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, and it was a kick in the pants. That was when all that stuff was really bubbling and very exciting times. Very exciting now, but kind of in a different way,
Right.
But I don't live there now, so I don't know. I'm down in LA now. Yeah, that was my experience in the world of Atari. And like I say, I love that computer. And I think it's still viable. I don't know. I guess those floppy drives, I don't know, they still work?
The floppy drives work. The cassette drives tend to not work without a lot of repair. The belts inside stretch and melt away. Floppy drives usually work, and
wow.
floppy, yeah.
That's impressive.
Some of the floppy disks are starting to go, just bit rot.
Falling apart, right.
Yeah, sometimes literally the magnetic bits, the magnetic stuff just flakes off the Mylar. Most of the time they're fine, but they're not going to last forever.
Right. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Kevin. I appreciate you interviewing me.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate your time.
Very good, sir.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.